Hey guys, thanks Lon for the intro and for having me here. I've been a V-Ray user for 9 years. I'm here today to talk about immersion. It's a state of being deeply engaged or involved or absorption. Immersion for creators is about the relationship between process and the resulting content produced. The less you are connected to a process, the less you're actually immersed in it. And that has impacts on your ability to maximize your creativity. It's also about action and reaction. The process of filmmaking is about the act of catching something that's in flux. As Paul Greengrass says, drama is about the collision without knowledge of the consequences. A little bit about me and how I got to embrace this philosophy. I went to art school in the late 90s, did a ton of traditional fine art, abstraction, painting, drawing, photography, did a ton of representational work, and I really got into plein air landscape painting. So what is that? That's you grab your paints, you go out hiking into nature, you bring a little 8x10 canvas, and you find a scene that responds or that you respond to, and you just capture the moment, and then you walk away from it. A little slice of time that is not to be dwelled upon after the fact. And what I really liked about this idea was it's a passive form of creation. You as an artist, you're a conduit of, this scene, this world out in front of you is coming in through your eyes, quietly through your brain, through your hands and onto the canvas. And then you just walk away and let it be. But I always had a digital kick. Photoshop was brand new. I learned on like Photoshop 2.0. And I got into video games. There was a game called Riven, which was the sequel to Myst. And at the time, the graphics were really cutting edge. And what I really loved about it was, well, they called it like the non-gamer's game. It was a very meditative experience where you were just dropped onto this island and then you could just go exploring and slowly at your own pace, like do problem solving and solve the puzzles of the world. And that game is kind of what changed my creative trajectory. I realized that what this game was giving me was this incredible sense of immersion that I was trying to capture with these landscape paintings that I was previously doing. And so I wound up taking any 3D class that I could in college, and that led to me getting a job at a game company in Baltimore for a few years. And that eventually led me to Blur Studio, where I've been for 15 years now. I've been off and on CG supervising, VFX supervising, and directing, and in 15 years I've worked on 75 projects. But in my free time, I also make films, short films. In 2009, I started on this short film called Grounded, and it was my first kind of foray into live-action filmmaking. And it was a kind of a meditation on my father, who had recently passed away. And it was kind of a reminder. I was at Blur for like 6 or 7 years at the time. And in art school, they're telling you to find your own problems or explore your own ideas. And it's something that, at Blur, as cool as the content, is, it's not something you can call your own. It's not something that originated from you as an artist. So I'll give you a little taste of that. Here's a teaser for Grounded. Thanks. There might be that tearing on all the movies I play. That's the first time I got up on screen, and it looks fine here, so apologies in advance. Grounded, it was my first live action experience after 7+ years doing all CG stuff at Blur. And right around that time, if you guys know about the Canon 5D Mark II, it was kind of a watershed moment for live action filmmaking. It was the first accessibly priced DSLR camera that could shoot HD 24 frames per second and on a full frame sensor, and that really gave you the ability to get like this really sexy depth of field that you had previously only seen on $75,000 cameras. So, you know, it was a great learning experience. What did I get out of that whole experience? Again, my first experience in live action. I got to work with performances in real time. I got to iterate with the actors from take to take quickly to achieve the desired performance. I could explore staging. We could try new things like that. In an animation pipeline, you want to try and change up the performance. You've got to wait 3 days for the animator to change it. Cinematography, it's the real world, and nature looks amazing through a camera lens. And then there's a sense of immediacy that's going on here on a live action set. Everything is happening concurrently. So there's this incredible sense of tension and life when all these interrelated elements are influencing each other simultaneously. You've got the actor that's aware of the camera operator is trying to follow the actor and keep up with his performance, and he's always conscious of the color and light that's creeping into the sides of the frame. And there's something beautiful about this like quest for perfection where all these different elements are struggling to kind of just, you know, reach and create this moment of beauty and perfection, but you're never going to be perfect, and that's where the beauty is. You know, you're creating on the edge between order and chaos. Meanwhile, at Blur, Tim Miller, the owner of Blur, who directed Deadpool, he started engaging with the Hollywood world at large. I supervised the Deadpool test footage that leaked online that wound up triggering the green light of, you know, the film. And it was one of our first attempts at 100% photoreal CG that could be, you know, interchanged with live action footage. And then soon after that, I got to supervise Thor 2, the opening prologue sequence, and that was more a traditional live action VFX route. You know, about half the shots were green screen extensions and a lot of effects off of live action plates. And then the other half were all CG shots. And again, we were just mixing and matching between these all CG shots and live action shots, intercutting. So these two worlds of all CG, photoreal, and, you know, taking the benefits of the live action world were starting to collide. And at the same time, I was brainstorming new short film ideas, new workflows that could potentially be intertwined with the CG and live action worlds more closely. And then in 2014, Chaos Group and Lon opened an LA office called their Labs division. They hired Chris Nichols, the creative director, and their mission was to empower artists using their software in unique and interesting ways. After seeing Grounded, they asked, how can we help you as a filmmaker? So I went off and I did some thinking. I asked myself, what's the sucky part of CG? And it's waiting, right? You know, you're waiting on renders, you're waiting on animation, on things from upstream departments. No, we didn't want any more waiting. We wanted creation on timescales that suited me as an artist. Seconds, not hours. And then what's the sexiest part of live action? Well, it's photoreal and it's real time. We want creativity to live and breathe from moment to moment, just like the real world. So this is a clip from The Nick. It's a Cinemax show. It was on for 2 seasons a few years ago. And it's directed by Steven Soderbergh, and he's known in the industry as being an incredibly prolific and efficient director. Not only a director, but he's a producer, he's a director, he's a cinematographer, he's an editor, and he's able to shoot this kind of show in half the time that any other one-hour TV show is shot. And then the practical, efficient VFX supervisor in me like loves this idea. And you know, one thing that I really responded to here was there is this underlying sense of observation. The camera operator and the viewer is passive and present and witnessing the scene unfolding. And whether or not we were there, the feeling is that the scene would have existed, you know, whether or not a camera operator was there to actually shoot this moment. Soderbergh, he is a pretty well-known filmmaker, made Ocean's 11, and he just shot a movie on an iPhone called Unsane. He's all about exploring new technologies. Even the way he stages the scenes, I mean, there's very long, extended takes. All right. So, as he says, there are so many steps of the process that can be optimized that don't involve creative decisions at all. What I love about all this new technology, whether it's the camera or the ability to edit in the van on the way back from work, it all comes down to the ability to iterate quickly. And so meanwhile at Blur, we have these incredibly short schedules, 3 months to do a 2 or 3 minute game cinematic. And I was finding it very frustrating with the inability to design our cinematics in a production context. There's just not the time to really think and plan in pre-production that much. We often found ourselves reverse engineering strong compositions because the previs team didn't have enough information to compose to this, compose the scene with a set of considerations beyond just the form of the objects. If you've seen previs, they're just grayscale models. So back to the question. My answer to this was, I'm looking for immersion, presence, observation, and immediacy. So I proposed a short film and that we prototype a few workflows, with Chaos Group. Okay, so construct production goals: speed, independence, and creativity. So what did we do for speed? We looked at the GPU. That's a big talk of today. I had heard about GPU ray tracing. This is in 2014, by the way, when we started this project. I had heard about the potential of GPU ray tracing and seen some promising experiments and solutions online, but historically impractical for production. There weren't too many production-proven results yet, and none that were achieving the volume, consistency, and quality that we were targeting. And then there were memory ceiling concerns with the GPUs of that generation. At 2014, the max cards had like 6 gigs of memory. But when you think about your high-end production CPU scenes, you're using 32, 64 gigs of memory. But in 2014, NVIDIA released some K6000s, and they had 12 gigs of memory. And all of a sudden, you could start thinking about doing some decent production scenes if you planned properly. You could fit the scenes on the cards and actually render some good-looking stuff. And then software-wise, V-Ray GPU, it's physically based render. I had done some really initial benchmarks between the GPU and CPU. I was getting 5x and sometimes up to 14x faster performance over my i7 core. And then, that was only with one GPU, and then a lot of these machines got multiple PCIe slots, so you could stack in 2, 3, 4 GPUs, and all of a sudden that 5x performance turns into like 20x performance. That's not playing, sorry. So, summary, if you design with the GPU in mind, and what do I mean by that, if you're prudent with assets and memory usage, and you think about geometry instances as much as you can, and you have texture considerations, you can take full advantage of GPU performance. And I was looking at HD final frame renders at 5 minutes a frame and 4 to 6 gigs of memory. And note that a lot of these limitations that I've been talking about in the 4 years since I started, have started to evaporate. The GV100s that just came out, they have 32 gigs of memory. You can stack a few of them together. You can connect the memory, so you could have like 64 gigs of memory. And 75% of our projects at Blur, or jobs at Blur, are using under 64 gigs of memory. So this is a production solution by now. Mention that. Independence. Independence from a cumbersome hardware and infrastructure, right? So Here is your typical animation production environment. It takes a lot of people to deliver high quality work in a professional setting like this, in part because we need to preserve a fair amount of flexibility responsibly, for client and director notes and revisions throughout the entire production process. Taking to its extreme, an animation pipeline could be up to 18 rolls. The independent nature of Construct was not going to have this. I had to take a hard look at what tasks and roles I was comfortable doing, or within striking distance if I gave myself a little bit of time to learn, and then which areas I would need the help of super talented friends and coworkers to carry some or all of the weight to ensure the delivery of the quality we were targeting. I didn't have a 20,000 square foot facility to produce this kind of content. I had a 300 square foot apartment, which I will show you right now.
Hey guys, I thought I'd show you my hardware setup.
No.
This is a final shot just rendered on my secondary monitor.
Sorry guys. Try this again. Oh, that's not good. Try one more time. All right, here we go.
Hey guys, I thought I'd show you my hardware setup. This is a final shot just rendered on my secondary monitor. My primary monitor, I'm working on another shot, getting that set up to render. This is my main workstation. Down here, one of the boxes, K6000 and two K40s. Over here is my secondary station, another box. See, this one's rendering a shot away. Third station is over here, also rendering away. And this is all inside my studio apartment. Note the open doors, air conditioning, keep those GPUs cool. And that's Rufus.
I was crunching to put together this 1-minute teaser for NVIDIA's GTC in 2014, and I was blowing fuses. I was using up so much power, so I had to borrow power from my neighbor. All right, cloud rendering. So when NVIDIA saw the potential of these early construct tests, they invited us to explore GPU rendering on their cloud. So what is a VCA machine? It's a box about yay big, and you can fit 8 GPUs in there, and it fits into your traditional CPU render farm rack. And up in San Jose, California, NVIDIA has 16 of these boxes, sit in an air-conditioned room. That's 150 GPUs. So the V-Ray guys wrote basically it's probably like V-Ray Cloud Alpha 0.1 web-based interface into managing and rendering V-Ray data on the cloud. Oh geez, this is not good. Sorry guys. Oh, that looked like something. There we go. So this is like the web-based interface that Chaos Group wrote for me. So very simple stuff, set some render resolutions, what frames, noise thresholds, and you submit. And so what you're seeing here is each one's a frame. Each frame is assigned one of those VCA machines. So it's 8 GPUs rendering each frame, and you can see how fast it's going. It was really cool to see the keynote today and what they've done with it so far. Very exciting. So once the sequence is done, you can download a JPEG sequence, load it up in a RAM player, and bam, that's what you rendered on the cloud. Okay, so creativity. I wanted to create conditions to maximize artistic exploration and experimentation. You guys have probably heard of virtual production. It's digital filmmaking with an emphasis on real-time technologies and their creative benefits. It's aiming to immerse the live-action crew in the digital analog of a live-action set. And you probably know what performance capture is. You can stick actors in a motion capture volume, you can track their performances, and then you can drop that performance onto your digital characters, in my case, robots. I'm going to show you a quick little fight choreography sequence that we shot on the mocap stage. So what else can you do in a motion capture volume? Well, you can capture virtual cameras. See if we get this going. All right. So 8 Saturdays, I would sneak into Blur. I would set up these. This is a mobile motion capture volume. You see all those cameras all around the side of the room. And then you can see me basically loading up a scene file, this scene over on the right, and that's me basically capturing, in this case, maybe there was like 40 cameras that I shot, and you can see that I play blasted out all the resulting cameras there, and then I turned it into the edit at the top there. And I wound up shooting, I did 8 days like this, 100 cameras a day, 900 cameras total, in which I wound up editing down to 210 shots for the final short film. And one thing that I really fell in love with was the editorial process in CG. Previously, you know, our layouts were so attentive to every frame because it's so expensive to render that often you don't have that kind of flexibility to go into an editorial suite with minutes of footage that you can cut down. Where the current camera quality suffered was you were trying to compose an image that looked like that, okay? The only thing you can do with a virtual camera to that is compose to silhouette and form. But what I wanted was something like that, okay? This is lighting, shaders, texture. I wanted to compose in real time to photorealistic scenes. In other words, replicate reality at 24 frames per second so we can film it. So one of the projects that Chaos Group helped prototype was a V-Ray motion builder plugin that could ride on top of, you know, your live performance capture. So here's a quick little demonstration of that. We're in here at the Just Cause Entertainment motion capture facility. We have our performers, Dan and Roberto. What we'll be doing is tracking their performances that are being acted out in this volume here. Path tracing in real time through V-Ray inside the Motion Builder and displaying it on the OptiTrack's Insight VCS camera group. Down here, we have the 3D Box 4920 Extreme GPU Edition, and it's housing NVIDIA's K6000 and K40s, each with 12 gigs of video memory. You take this, you look at yourself in the mirror. So what's going on now is I put up a mirror in this environment, and now Darren, as Bill, is going to go up and look in the mirror at himself. Let's see this. Pause.
Pausing.
Play.
Play.
Woo!
feet, my own robotic feet.
Yeah. What this is enabling us to do, film performance using the same algorithms now in real time that up until now have only been reserved for offline rendering that could take minutes or hours to produce. This allows me to compose the frame to color and light. Previously, you were just staring at grayscale characters moving around. It was very crude. Play. You address the camera, Darren. Look down towards us.
We need to do a lot of work up here.
Pause.
Still got a lot to go.
Play. So we just shot a take of Roberto and Darren fighting each other. Now we want to review that take. So what we can do now with V-Ray for Motion Builder is replay the take while it's path tracing in real time. So this is the take we just captured, playing back in real time. And at any given moment, we can pause it, and it resolves to final quality. This is a great way to evaluate how the lighting and shaders behave in the take that you just captured. Now that we're using these algorithms that can scale to a final production frame, what you see now, you know is what you're going to get.
That's dope. Now, put that down.
That is some amazing looking previews. And I don't even know if you call previews it. Thanks, guys. So, what are the implications for filmmaking here? Well, you're starting to combine like a lot of the techniques from the live action world with the virtual production world. It's a hybrid CG live action experience. You can replicate the live action workflow more closely. You can light in previs potentially to inform what they will light on set when the day comes. You can get confident creative buy-offs. So if you've got all the key creative stakeholders on the mocap stage, and they're able to kind of work with you on the lighting and the depth of field end of things, that is going to create a whole lot of clarity for the rest of the production pipeline later on. And it's also a very organic, intuitive, spontaneous experience. It's very fun. Okay, so we had this little box on the side of the mocap stage. All right, it had 3 GPUs in it. And we asked NVIDIA, can we render this performance capture thing in real time on the cloud? So this video demonstrates that idea. Maybe. Nope. Sorry, guys. Here we go. We're here at the Chaos Group office in Culver City, California. We set up this down and dirty mocap stage. We're using OptiTrack's Flex 13 cameras, which are here around me. We have the Insight VCS camera rig down here. We've got Darren Ross, our performer. What we're going to be doing tonight is capturing Darren's performance. We're going to pump that into Motion Builder, and we're going to stream that up to NVIDIA's GPU cluster via V-Ray Cloud.
So Boris, last year we were able to basically get V-Ray App SDK to go inside a Motion Builder and give us live rendering on the GPU inside of a standard frame buffer.
Right.
This year we're doing something different. What are we doing?
To connect Motion Builder directly to the V-Ray Cloud using just a public internet infrastructure. So what we're doing right now is just getting all the data inside the Motion Builder using the App SDK, and then we're sending this data to the V-Ray Cloud, distributing the data inside the cluster in a very fast manner using infinite band. And when each frame is ready, let's say 10 to 15 milliseconds or something like this, then we are getting back the frames, compositing them, and we're streaming back just ordinary JPEGs. So you can use any kind of device like iPhone or even desktop browser, and you can be everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter actually.
So you could be capturing here, and you could be viewing it in Australia.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to be tapping into the scalability of GPU rendering and streaming back to us onto the monitor here an amazingly high fidelity image, multiple times greater than what we could do locally.
In in our flight to California, actually, we tried to use the V-Ray cloud from the airplanes. We were able to do some rendering inside the V-Ray cloud, and it was pretty amazing. It was like, I mean, history.
We can also art direct lighting. At the same time, we're capturing the performance and filming the scene. We can set dress to create dynamic compositions the same way they would on a live action set. The actor can get a better sense of their place in the world. They can feel out the environment, be able to imagine or project themselves into the scene, inform their acting. Last year I had what I was calling a Polaroid mode, where I would hit pause and it would kind of develop or resolve to something that was less grainy and clear. And now what we've got, because we're tapping into the cloud rendering and scalability, is I don't have to do that anymore. I'm seeing what I saw last year when I was freezing frame. I'm seeing that in real-time at interactive frame rates now. Again, this all kind of alludes to a much more organic experience of being able to find the shot that works for you in a natural way.
It's the first time that I've had a render farm waiting on me to give it jobs to render. So, to summarize that part, I don't want to wait on the tool, I want the tool to wait on me. It's Steven Soderbergh again. In other words, Paul Greengrass talks about establishing conditions in which you can free yourself of the sense that it's been previously created. Move on time, 1 sec. So I'm going to rush through Doug Trumbull because I always do talks and I never have time to really talk about Doug Trumbull. But we rendered a shit ton of footage, equivalent of 20 minutes of feature film CG in volume in 1 week on 12 of those VCA machines up in NVIDIA's cloud. Okay, virtual reality. Okay. Everyone talks about it, greater immersion into the world, the opportunity for more moments of creativity. But me being like a quality whore, I was going to be insistent on preserving the quality that you could get in these offline renders like V-Ray as you made a transition into virtual reality. So the first thing I did was experiment with these cube maps. You guys have probably messed around with them. They've been implemented in V-Ray for a while now. So they're stereo cube maps. They work great on mobile devices. It gives you a really a good sense of presence, but it's a locked nodal point in the scene. And then if you have enough render power and GPUs happen to be really fast, you can start rendering animated sequences with them. So I came across these guys, Star VR, and they had acquired a Belgian company called Nozone, and they're working on a V-Ray plugin called Presence. And what it does, these guys are actually here this week. Way in the back, if you go outside the room and head left, they have a little booth, and you can test out this tech. So basically, if you imagine in a V-Ray scene, imagine your head inside a 1 meter volume. When you render the scene through this plugin, you have 6 degrees of freedom. You can look left, you can move left and right, you can look all the way around, up and down, and it looks exactly like a V-Ray render. It's pretty beautiful. So what we wound up doing was they were looking for content, so I gave them all the assets from Construct, and they went ahead and made this volumetric VR version of Construct. They're still working on it. They're adding 2 or 3 minutes every couple of months. They're up to 6 minutes now. But man, it's really cool to be able to put on a headset and you're like in the world, and it looks just as good as the 2D short film. So be sure to go check out their tech back there. Another technology that I'm messing around with is there's a company in downtown LA called Neuralize, and they're working on a plugin called Atom View. And Atom View is 6 degrees of freedom in V-Ray as well. If you guys are familiar with DPXRs, it's basically, when you render into a frame buffer, every camera sample into a pixel is going to be stored as RGB and a depth value too. So in Nuke, for instance, you could load up all those samples as a 3-dimensional array of points. And so conceptually, that's kind of what's going on here. So I'm working on a new film idea and I wanted to do a vignette or a scene from this hypothetical feature film. So the last few months I've been working on that. Here's a little demo of it. Call it a VR cinematograph. It's basically, you know, those animated GIFs that you see online where it's just like water lapping forever or somebody's hair blowing in the wind. It's kind of what I want to do here, just to bring a few little elements to life. Like this astronaut is breathing on a breathing loop. You can see the foggy helmet. The water is just lapping a little bit. Just these little accents of life to the scene. And you can teleport around. And remember, these are all points. And the cool special sauce that these guys are working on is it's a point filling algorithm. So no matter how close you are to these points, it inflates to fill up the pixels on your Vive or whatever. And the cool thing is, I mean, these are just renders out of V-Ray into a regular frame buffer that happen to be EXRs. So it's a workflow you're very accustomed to. One more, I'm going to skip ahead one more. Okay, so they're also working another production tool called New Design, and that's V-Ray plus VR plus virtual production. So I'm going to play a little video of that. So I see this as a potentially great tool for helping live action crews even plan and be, you know, efficient come the day of the shoot. If you guys know about LiDAR scans, when in pre-production when you're going to go do a film, you're going to go out to all the locations and, you know, scout the locations. Is this a place you want to shoot? Well, you know, what I'll do is I'll bring along like a guy that's going to do LiDAR scans of all the locations, and then we'll bring that back in here, and we'll have months of pre-production where we can be dropping these LiDAR scans into VR, and you can start to consider, you know, how do we want to stage the scene? You know, you can see there's a whole suite of tools with cameras. You can replicate most of the modern camera lenses and cameras and sensors out there these days. It's early stuff. There's a ton of potential here. You know, you can create like little video villages on the side with monitors. And then you can start to notate the scene. It's like, this camera should move that far. Or I want to frame it from here. Here I'm animating a camera. I'm going to do a crane up from his feet. Here you can see a lot of the camera lenses that you can replicate.
Okay, Adam, how you doing? So just hang out there for a bit.
And you can collaborate. So multiple people can jump into this VR space.
2 more astronauts on either side of him?
Yes.
And another one over here. There we go. Maybe you want to put the camera over here to your left.
Okay.
See where I'm pointing over there? Maybe have it kind of truck in along the rock wall.
This is stuff that the live action world is going to love, because this is a context. I mean, once they put on a headset, it's a context that they're very familiar with. You know, they get to walk around a physical space. You know, it's fairly easy to learn how to use and operate the controllers.
There we go. Oh yeah. Yeah, right. Man, this is dope. It's like a giant movie theater.
All right. So looks like time is up. So I'm going to cut it short there. And thanks for coming out, guys.